Peace and love, everyone. It's your girl, Karina. Welcome back to the Eye of Karina TV channel. And today I wanted to talk to you guys about the special placement of Jupiter in a man's chart. So we're focused on men today, okay? And we're going to look at and understand how Jupiter in a man's chart shows how he fathers, okay? And if you have any aspects to your Jupiter, right, and you're a male, right? So these might be things that show you how it may be easy, right? Or where there may be some hindrances when it comes to how you father. So if you're in the building and you guys hear my audio, just let me know because we're working on making the audio better these days, okay? So just let me know if you hear me, okay? And so I'm also going to share our convo here over with Facebook so that they can chime on in. So if you're watching the replay, check down below. I'll have timestamps at some point, and you can skip over to the parts that you feel the most. And yeah, let's tune into some tunes here until we move over to Facebook. Just give me a second. Spread love, spread love, spread love. Spread love, spread love, spread love. Queen Karina, I've been stung by a scorpion. Ooh, I felt that. Wanted to believe in fairy love, but I shut it down fast track. For love, the attack, may not get that pushback. Yeah, the word down on you. I'm the only one that's been down for you. Buckets of ice for the night when no one's really there for you. I was really down for you. Queen like a renegade, hood tough. Flashlight pretty, says a hood up. Rapping BK, that's my hood wife. Turn a low lamp to a good fall. What's a penny to a nickel? What's a diamond to a crystal? If you're not aware, Karina Red, crown me the headache, where I'm not fitted. None of them people you don't even care. Who holds it down like no one? Sex you as good as no one. Okay, you guys. Welcome to Eye of Karina TV. Today we're going to talk about Jupiter in a man's chart and how Jupiter in a man's chart is where he fathers. This is what separates the fuck boys from the real ones. Here's my blues verse. We gotta let him ride. Had a few times. Some of them was more like nickels. Tried to tell me love was blind. Couldn't make up their mind, so I figured out love was fickle. Okay, Jupiter in a woman's chart. Jupiter in a woman's chart is going to show how her father has taught her. Also, what in a husband she's going to look for that synergy that makes her feel like she's improving, like she's getting the light. She needs the light from two ways from a man, from here and from here. A lot of other niggas would skip town. Stand by my words, I'ma get down. Turn a hit a smile to a big frown. Thinking I'm not gonna ride with you, baby. If you going down, I'ma down with you, baby. If you take off, I'ma fly. All right. Okay, so let's do this. Let's talk about Jupiter in a man's chart. It's a very powerful position. Jupiter, my favorite planet, honestly, to talk about because who doesn't like talking about luck and fortune and expansion? And of course, there are darker sides to Jupiter as well. Strong addiction, spreading yourself too thin, spreading yourself too far, spreading yourself too wide. Jupiter can showcase too much gambling, too much, addiction to anything that just is entertaining. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, Jupiter has its dark side, but for the most part, Jupiter provides for us a chance to look to where our strengths are, look to where our talents are going to reside. What is it that our masculine energies are going to be feeding and teaching us in our youth and in life? And when we look specifically in a man's chart, we really discover his relationship to father's teachings, his relationship to how he's going to even approach women based off of these father's teachings. We could go that far. We can look at his teachings, which will happen from father's teachings to also life experiences. When a man's Jupiter is activated early in life, he has a daddy energy. Okay, these are the guys that can have the potential of being the real ones. Okay, guys who have strong Mars and Pluto, they could be other things. You know, Mars, you definitely going to find the strong fuck boys. Pluto, you're definitely going to find those more psychologically alluring types. But with Jupiter, when you find a Jupiter, these are the ones that you can discover yourself through, discover yourself as a, gender wise, as far as a feminine or female character, what it is that makes you important to masculinity, right? When you are dealing with Jupiter, you can uncover and reveal more of your femininity because Jupiter provides pure light. Okay, it is like this being of hope, optimism, and happiness. It's this idea of joy, of being jolly. And so this is why the dark side of Jupiter is just taking so much of this happiness and fortune and jolliness and taking it too far, taking it too wide. Okay. And so this is why you also will find fuckboys as Jupiter as well too. So Jupiter is about this idea of really centering it with Saturn. When you find Jupiter and Saturn working very well, or the man working very well on his Jupiter and Saturn, this is where I feel like you're going to find the real ones. Okay. So, a man who understands Jupiter and Saturn in his chart is capable of understanding his ability to expand, right? Physically and metaphysically. And when he is dealing with Saturn, he is using his sense of authority, right? When he's using his Mars, he's using his sexual activity, which is just as important. But when we're looking for those real ones, when we're looking for those guys that are going to, be the leader and the teacher of your children, you're going to look at Jupiter, okay? So Jupiter in a man's chart in the first house is going to show how he fathers in a way that is due to the area of life in which a woman has to present herself. Okay. And so when it comes to if he has male children, he will also be focused on how they present themselves. He will be very much focused on uh, cultural preferences of what is feminine and what is masculine. Okay. Jupiter is tied to Sagittarius being the planetary ruler of Sagittarius. So it pulls in this idea of I'm here to maintain culture, I'm here to maintain heritage, and I'm here to maintain traditions. And rituals go through me, right, in the Jupiterian aspect. So where you're going to find Jupiter in a man's chart is where he'll focus on these kinds of traditions and maintaining or obtaining new cultures. Okay. So when you look at Jupiter in the first house, it might be something about a ritual where you have to show yourself of being of age or something like that. Now, you might be born in a culture where everybody has to do that, but a man with Jupiter in the first house is going to really take it importantly. He's going to really father his children in a way to accept the respect and importance of showing off yourself to strangers, to impress people, things like that. Okay, so Jupiter in first, let me say that Jupiter in the signs is going to have the style in which they do it, right? So if it's Jupiter in the first house and it's Aries, it's going to be very militant, and his fathering style and his way of being is going to like be almost domineering a little bit, right? Versus a Libra Jupiter in the first house where he may have like a little bit of a cordiality, a kindness, and a softness to the way that he fathers. But he is going to be focused a lot on presentation. It's going to be an important thing in how he fathers. All right. So when you're, dealing with these people out here, you want to understand that their Jupiter energy will show, even if you don't look at a chart, like they will have certain things that they want to teach you about. Okay. So this is about to go whole all the way left field because I didn't plan to talk about this, but let's do it. We're live, whatever. Okay, so when we understand this idea of fuck boys, right? We got to really understand that on this channel we talk from a goddess point of view. We talk from feminine energy, divine feminine energy. We understand the role that divine feminine energy plays in manifesting what we have today and the role of divine feminine energy. When she manifests fuck boys, she's manifesting a man who is Mars centered. Okay? And that's the thing. It's more about energizing his desires. And so this is why you get and attract fuck boys. Okay, so if you're ready to take it to another level, then you might want to look for more Saturnian and Jupiter energy as well as Mars energy, because yeah, you still want a man who's a freak in the sheets, but a teacher in the streets. Basically, you want somebody who has more dimensions to them, which means that they're tapping into their Jupiter and they're tapping into their Saturn. However, I feel that Jupiter is big daddy energy. That's the one that I would choose to look for more. However, for those who look for men who have a certain status in life, that means that you are more attracted to his Saturn. You're looking for the parts of him that um, show a business, that show the need to provide and things like that. So you're looking for more Saturn, in which you're going to have a very dry relationship if you haven't looked and focused on his Mars, which is his sexual energy, and his Jupiter, which is his teaching energy. How much does he want to involve himself, infiltrate himself into whatever it is that you're doing or that your children are doing? That's where you find that in a man's chart. So you want to look for Jupiter energy, specifically when you're really looking for the real ones, because Jupiter gets a bad rap as being almost like not, you know, almost fuck boy itself, because Jupiter energy might want to, fuck every woman in the world. You know what I'm saying? So the thing to understand about this is that's very true, and that's because you have to understand what that man wants with his Jupiter. You might want to look at what the sign is there. You might want to look at the placement is there. You also might want to look at his Venus. But when we're talking about Jupiter specifically, you want to look at the things that his Jupiter is centered around. Certain positions of Jupiter would show that, look, he's probably not going to settle down until a lot later. And Jupiter actually shows, and it's kind of like a mirroring on humanity and this idea of the maturation of man, in which as he gets older and has more wisdom, he becomes more of that real one type. However, you don't have to wait. There's a lot of men that evoke their Jupiter, want to evoke their Jupiter, don't have the society that provides for them to evoke their Jupiter. Because you can see that a lot of society built off of the Mars root chakra. So a man who wants to be more big daddy energy or wants to be more business like, you know what I'm saying, publishing and whatnot. If he lived in a more of a culture where it was provided, he might imagine if our culture was more tapped into projecting onto men how to be more teachers and how to speak and be those guides to people, versus if teaching men how to just fuck everything he wants to see. You know what I'm saying? It's not like I want to control the Mars. I think that the Mars is beautiful. I think that men's sexual drive is necessary. But when we're talking about the quality, we want more. And this is what this conversation is about when we're talking about that fuck boys to the real ones uh, um, choices that we have. So, looking at Jupiter, you can find these things to be the case. You can find that he may have more substance to him when his Jupiter is bright and working in his chart, or if he is working on it. So if you have are in a relationship or you have a friend or whatever, And you guys do astrology, why not look at his chart? Why not look at each other's Jupiter and discover how it is that you're supposed to be guides and teachers to one another? All right, because Jupiter upgrades women too. When you're Jupiter, you have the ability to be sexy and smart. That's what Jupiter gives women in the society. So yeah, okay, so moving on, Jupiter in the second house. So Jupiter in the second house, specifically in a man's chart, is going to show how he wants to father, and he's going to focus a lot on finances. He's going to father in the style and the means and the wanting to see finances be a major role play. Look too much to avoid this part of why, when we're looking at heterosexual relationships specifically, men and women, and the differences that can happen just on a gender basis. It's mainly based off of a society conditioning that we even have these things in the first place. But I'm not here to prove that. The biggest thing that I would say is that when you infiltrate Jupiter in a conversation between a man and a woman, this is that style in which she is open and he is teaching, wanting to fix, wanting to bring a new ideas, new philosophies and expansions into her mind. These are the things that I think in society we can gaslight and look over a lot. It's like we don't want people to change us or to be, trying to teach us anything or go that deep. We want to keep things very shallow. We want to be independent as if we can't learn anything from one another. And when we get into the space, this is where in dating, even that it becomes a real difficult thing to find somebody who is sexy and substantial. you know I- if you had more of Jupiter in your conversations, Jupiter in your dating styles, then that energy would look like, oh, I've never heard of that, explain this to me, or tell me more about this. And this goes for the man and the woman and vice versa, right? In which both are more inquisitive of what the other can teach. And this comes from a place of knowing that you don't know everything, and that the person that I'm with or dating or potentially wanting to be with would be able to expand my life, bring fortune to my life, and aha and big philosophies through their knowledge of what they know that I don't know. This is what Jupiter brings into a relationship. He fills the blind spots, the parts that you don't know. So, and that you've never seen before. So, Jupiter in relationships can be amazing, and probably, is one of the more overlooked energies, in today's society. I mean, nobody's talking like this. Nobody's saying, well, what's your Jupiter? But what if they were? What if they were, or what if you just had more of that style where you were more inquisitive, you were more open to what they could teach you, and vice versa? Because some of the issues is also that men don't think they can learn from women. So if we had that exchange on a Jupiterian level, imagine the things that could occur. So keep moving. If Jupiter is in a man's chart and in the third house, now Jupiter is going to focus on his fathering in speech and language. He may even be bilingual or want to learn different languages and want to incorporate that with children. He might be more like in the surroundings. Like this might be more of a stay at home dad. When we're moving into the third and the fourth house, you're going to find that even more, especially if you look at it from a synastry chart, right? And if his Jupiter falls in your fourth house or your third house, he might be your stay at home dad, just based off of that astrology. But Jupiter in the third house, he wants to be more in the surroundings. He might be a man of the community, and he might be a father of the community. So he might be fathering maybe the kids down the block. He might be the local school coach, right? He might be wanting to bring his kids into the community in that way as well, like coaching his kids and coaching his the school, which allows for them to integrate, because the third house is about integrating, it's about translating, things like that. So Jupiter in the third house, that's how he's going to father. That's going to be like the area of life that you'll see is really focused on. Now Jupiter in the fourth house, He's going to be a caring, compassionate, and loving father, especially if he has really good aspects to Jupiter in that area, and it's in a really harmonious zodiac sign. Then that fourth house, he's going to expand the home. He's going to bring light into the home. He's going to be the thing that synergizes the home to feel like it's jovial and happy. So Jupiter in the fourth house definitely a winner in a man's chart for those who really want to build that family, you know. Jupiter in the fifth house, this might be one of the places that, you know, in a man's chart, you definitely are dealing with somebody who might battle youthfulness. Also in the first house, first and the fifth house, and second house. This need to be like, you know, out and about. Jupiter in the fifth house might be a big dating person, right? And Jupiter in this area is also more prone to addiction, but it is still one of the most joyful places. It's one of the most expressive places. And Jupiter in the fifth house, this might be a father who, you know, allows his children to be creative, to not really have ambitions to like be a doctor or a nurse or have all those, you know, practical things, but go after what allows you to have self expression. Sorry, excuse me. Go after the thing that on what he feels about it, or a big say so, or you know, like really might be meddling in his children's romantic lives with Jupiter in the fifth house. Okay, so these are just these ideas to understand how you merge Jupiter in the houses when we look at fathering styles. So Jupiter in the sixth house, his fathering style is going to definitely be about getting a job, working that 9 to 5, or being practical to some degree, especially in today's society. But things of that like that are changing. But he definitely wants to focus on how are they going to contribute to that, to the bills and the things in the house, right? And this might be starting early chores in life. He might really be big on the kids learning their chores, or really big on them like getting a cute little job in the summer, you know, things like that, because he really wants to infiltrate that idea of responsibility and service into his fathering in the sixth house. And he will expand on that, helping them to really see how service oriented people are really able to be productive in this world. So Jupiter in the sixth house is really going to work from that manner. And if not specifically those things, the idea in the sixth house is that Jupiter in his fathering style is going to focus on your calling, but not this calling that like there's different types of callings. There's the calling of your career where you're like, this is the me, I am the best, the boss on top, I am the goat, you know. That's not it. In the sixth house, it's more like your calling of purpose and service towards humanity, your vocational calling. And he'll have something there where he's pull that out of his children. Who are you going to be when you grow up? That's going to be his one of his things. So when we move into the seventh house, Jupiter in a man's chart will show his fathering style to be really businesslike. It may feel contractual. It may sometimes even have a little bit of a lack of water, a lack of emotions here. But it can also be important because he may focus a lot on the union of his children, the marriage of his children, the type of standards he wants when his children marry. He might focus on just how they relate to people, right? So in a social setting, you know, how are they considerate? This is a place in the seventh house where we're looking at how are people considering another person's wins and losses. And these are things that he might be really big on. So Jupiter in the fifth house is focused on social intelligence for his children. And that's how he's going to father. In the eighth house, this is where we're going to find, you know, very deep taboo, bizarre topics. This might be a dad that really does focus on, you know, being more sexually open, maybe even appearing to be slightly perverted because it is Jupiter here. This might be just a dad that shows that he can bend and be fluid with his children, breaking gender boundaries, being the dad that dresses up in a dress for his daughter. You could find that here, the ability to let go, to release, right? He can also be somebody who really invests in his children, teaches his children about money and investment, starts his kids off with stocks and bonds early in life. He might also be really, yeah, he's going to be very focused on security, but also on trusting. He might be big on lying, like, are you lying to me, or being open about it. He might have control issues, so maybe at first he's trying to control the kids, but if he can learn how to be more develop trust with his fathering style, then this placement can work really well as a father. It just needs to work through some of the bizarreness of the interrelations when Jupiter is in the eighth house, because it's that intimacy place, but Jupiter isn't as intimate as it's expanding. So it really just has to learn how to focus in that eighth house. Now, in the ninth house, he's going to be the father of the teacher of all teachers. He will probably lecture his kids from the morning to evening. They will probably have to sit and listen to his stories, especially if Jupiter in the ninth or the 12th house. You are going to have to the man's style. Jupiter is going to be more like, I've got all the answers. He might really be the coach, like one-on-one coach to one of the kids. He might be, a teacher himself, things like that. So is very focused on education as well. Very focused on higher education for the kids. Very focused on their future developments and expansion. Also very focused on the kids maybe being a part of some sort of spirituality, a part of some sort of religious belief sets. It's not all of these things, but it's one or the, it's not going to be all of those things. But religion can play a very big role in his fathering style when Jupiter is in the ninth house. Now, in the 10th house, his fathering style is going to be very authoritative, especially if you look at whatever zodiac sign is there. But he will focus also on business, creating entrepreneurs. Jupiter in the fifth house will also be a father that could create entrepreneurs. Jupiter in the 10th house wants his children to be on top. He's very focused on status, very focused on how they look to the world as far as reputation goes, and might be very hard on reputation. Certain zodiac signs, it may be softer, but just because he seems subtle or seems like he doesn't care, if he's got Jupiter in the 10th house, he cares about reputation, and he might use his children or be, really caring about how his children are portrayed in the world as far as their own self-respect and self-importance. Okay. Now, Jupiter in the 11th house, this is the kind of fathering style that is going to really also be about being out and about, wanting the children to be out and about, wanting to focus on their visions. This is also what when you grow up kind of position, where it's very focused on the vision of what they want to manifest. um, this is also a father who's a friend to their child, who naturally knows how to father through the art of building friendship. And so this is also a father who wants to be a resource of networking. So maybe being a part of the lives of how they move and operate in their business. And so Jupiter, so Fawn, hi Fawn. So you said, can we go over Jupiter overlays? When you say overlays, do you mean like synastry, like Jupiter in your partner's chart versus your chart? That's what I think you mean. So moving into Jupiter in the 12th house, if Jupiter's in the 12th house, then his fathering style is going to appear to be very passive, but he's very angelic in his relationship to his children. He focuses a lot on what is the after, right? What is it that he's going to leave behind? He's going to, the eighth house is also that likely to have this kind of energy. he's going to focus a lot on what are the lessons that they will remember about him. What are the things that they can take when he's gone. He may be very connected to the spirit. He might be a man that when he is not connected to spirit, he doesn't have the ability to feel like that fathering type. He might really feel like a junkie. He might feel like, you know, throwaway kind of dad, unfortunately. But when he is really tapped into this energy and tapped in the spirit and the spirituality, he's going to be like an angel to his children. He will appear and act towards them and treat them as if he is completely under the guise of unconditional love and light. And the biggest thing that he might try to enforce and infiltrate is things like not being addicted and being sober and being connected to faith. He might focus on the dark side of that 12th house, and making sure that his children are protected from things like prisons, making sure that they understand cause and effect, crime and punishment, healthy versus sick, the importance of these things that you find in the 12th house, because the 12th house is where you go when you're sick. It's the house where you go when you're a criminal. You go to the 12th house. So he might be really focused on making sure his kids can survive life by avoiding these 12th house types of places. Okay, so that is it. My message in this really is to focus on the Jupiter in the men in your lives, helping them to feel like teachers, helping them to feel like guides and coaches to you and your children, and also men, to enhance the Jupiter in the women in your lives, allowing them to feel like they are experts and intelligent, allowing them to feel that they're sexy, being experts in intelligence. Um, Honoring Jupiter in relationships allows for you guys to have the sense of being receiving and open to receiving another person's point of view, another person's lessons to be learned, and philosophies. When we match on a level of philosophy, we connect in on the 33. The 33 master number is a number that is actually based off of the double three, which is Jupiterian double, and then the six, which is Venus, which is the balance of love and relationships. So Jupiter is a direct correlation to that harmony that you're looking for in your relationships, but specifically if you're out there trying to find the real ones, evoke their Jupiter. Okay, that's the message for today. Thank you guys so much for the love. I'll see you in the next live. Peace.